Hey, I'm Michael Dorinda.
And I am Jake Bennett.
And this is episode 166 of the North Meets South web podcast.
We've pink. You still have the pink hair.
I
There
do.
it is.
I still have it.
The
I
pink
forgot that it
and
was
the
set up. It's been that long since
bluish
we've recorded one of these
purple.
podcasts.
It has been a while. And so we've got a couple things we're going to cover today, folks. We're going to continue on the tenant storage journey, talking about file systems and storing file paths and directories in your database. And we're going to talk about referencing those things inside of your code with magic strings and enums and all sorts of fun stuff. And we're also going to talk about Laracon AU. Why don't we start with Laracon AU?
Sure.
How was it, my friend? It looked awesome. I saw
AU.
some people tweeting like today saying, you know, best conference I've ever been a part of. Like, it was absolutely incredible. All the good things. And so sounds like it was a huge hit.
Yeah, it's fun that 2 weeks on from the conference, people are still talking about it and people are still posting about it. I've been seeing LinkedIn, like where I never get any traction for anything really. There's been quite a bit of discussion and well wishes and support of the conference there, which is really nice. I think by and large we kind of nailed all the aspects of what we were trying to achieve this year, which I think is the most important thing. That as you know, we put a lot of time and effort into putting networking as the center of the event this year. Like last year, that was a kind of a missing piece. And so a big focus in everything that I did this year was to make sure that networking was front and center, that we made it possible for people to talk, to share, to engage with the speakers, to engage with sponsors, which is, a first for us. We've always had sponsors at the events, but we've kind of been space constrained in a way that meant that people didn't really get a chance to speak with the sponsors. So
Sure.
that was possible with the foyer that we had this year. We catered breakfast and lunch and afternoon tea this year, which made it possible for people to kind of stick around in the breaks and actually talk to each other without having to go and figure out where they were going to go and get food and things like that. So that was good. And all of the feedback from the speakers talks has been really good as well. We will have, by the time this recording comes out, publish all of the videos. So yeah, looking forward to that. And, everyone else getting an opportunity to see those videos. I mean, we did the live stream this year as well, which was something new for us.
Right.
We hadn't previously, like, we'd always recorded the videos, but we hadn't done a live stream. And Taylor came to me a few months ago and asked, are we going to be able to live stream the Night Watch announcement? I said, well, I'll find out if we can do it. And then we didn't really want to communicate it in any way because, number one, we hadn't done it. Number two, the venue couldn't actually provide us a hard line to the internet do the streaming. They had no Ethernet where the cameras were set up. So, but the video team that we use, Big Spin, are very good at what they do, and they had like some bonded 4G device, so they had two different providers on there, and they were able to stream it at full 1080.
No Starlink.
No Starlink. No, that's an idea for the future. That's
yeah.
So we had always planned to specifically do the Laravel announcement. If nothing else, we wanted to stream that component of the conference, but we kind of left any announcement about that until we had gotten into the theater and were actually able to test the throughput and thing, and like being able to test it the day before and being able to actually use it when there's 400 people in the room with their laptops and their phones and their iPads and whatever else is a very different proposition. But yeah, we had a consistent stream across 2 days. So yeah, we're happy with that, the way that turned out.
Yeah, that's awesome. Super cool. Did they give any indication why they call it Night Watch?
I don't think so. I have to go back and watch the video. Just another name.
Just another name.
Yeah. So yeah, we just finished putting together all like the thumbnails for the videos because that's
nice.
the thing
for
we do.
the YouTube video. Yeah,
We've got all the all the photos back from the photographer on the weekend.
I
So
saw people
going,
posting them. Yeah, it looks great.
yeah,
Great. Really, really good.
been going through those. We do that largely for the speakers so that they can put that
Hmm.
in portfolios, and if they submit to speak at other conferences, or we do headshots for them if they want, so they can update their LinkedIn and whatever other social media that they're using, or their website, whatever they want to use those for. We do that as well. So yeah, it was a
That's a
very
cool
good
kind
event.
of speaker perk, right? That's like a well
Yeah,
thought through sort of thing. Because you're right. Like everybody wants to be able to have those things, but unless it's done intentionally, sometimes it doesn't happen. Like headshots
yeah,
for sure don't really happen. You know what I mean? Like you
yeah,
get like the on-stage speaker shot, but that's a great idea. The headshots, it's a good one.
yeah. Just a
Nicely
little
done.
keepsake, and like as a conference speaker, you put a ton of effort into it.
Yeah. Right.
And, some conferences, I know, ours does, I'm pretty sure Laracon US does, it'll cover accommodation and flights and travel and things like that for the speakers, but many won't pay for you to actually speak necessarily. Like most
Hmm.
conferences won't pay speakers to present.
Right.
There's remuneration, as I said, or reimbursement in terms of flights and accommodation and things like that. And so all these little extra things that we can do, there's the speaker sponsor dinner, there's the headshots, like we do those as well for the speakers, just to, make it seem like it's not a huge waste of, I mean, not that it's a waste of time, but it's a lot of time goes into it, and it's nice to be able
Yeah.
to get something out on the other side of it as well. So
Yeah. Absolutely. No, that's good planning on your part. I love that. It's just like intentional. You know what I mean? And so like it just takes time to like think through that stuff and like put the planning in place to make that happen. So good on you. Good on you, mate.
thanks.
Also, you got a coffee maker recently. A new coffee maker? Yes,
Well,
tell me about this adventure.
well, my old one, because I was away for a week and I came back and it was a bit weak in the steam one department. Like it was going, but it was not going very well. I'm like, I better clean it out. It's probably gotten to that time again. And I went through the cleaning cycle and like it was okay. I'm like, this is on its last legs. And then there was like a early Christmas / Black Friday / whatever you want sale at this place. And I was like, all right, I'll buy that. And so there's this company makes like 10 or 12 different models of coffee machine, from like just a basic manual one all the way up to like fully automatic, does
Sure.
your milk,
Yeah.
does your espresso, whatever. And so I got like the 3rd tier model, but it was on sale for less than the 2nd tier model was, which was the one I was looking at. So I like got that. And I went to make a coffee with my old machine yesterday, and like the steam one just completely stopped. So I ended up with a tepid coffee, which was not ideal. And I'm like, nah, I'm not drinking that.
Totally.
But fortunately, the new one arrived yesterday, so I got that out and just dialing it in at the moment. I don't know if people have bought espresso machines, but you've got to mess with the setting. Basically, every time you get a new
right.
bag of beans, you've got to go through and dial it in to make sure
Oh,
that
really?
the grind size is correct. You're supposed to. If
Yeah,
you always
sure,
buy the
sure.
same beans, it's all right.
Yeah.
But you never know
Right.
when they were roasted relative to when you got them. How much they were roasted and things like that. And the grind amount will impact the quality of the espresso and how much crema you get in there and things like that. So
Yeah.
just working my way through it. But I don't normally drink espresso. Like I just have a a latte once a day and that's it. But I'm trying to keep myself to no more than 2, because just trying to get it right. So
Yeah.
but pretty happy
Dude,
with it. It's kind of noisy though, but it's I was always about the life of like, I'll grind the beans, I'll put them in
but it's so much time.
the thing. I mean, it's not a huge amount of time, but it was also part of my morning routine to do all of that. But I thought, no, this one does the espresso automatically. So I just push a button and it, I can program it so that it's like, this is how I want my shot, the temperature, how much, infusion there is and all that kind of stuff. And so
Sure. Yeah. Yeah.
just put the thing in there and off it goes. But I do need to learn how to use the steam on this thing, because it's like way more powerful even than like when it was working, but way more powerful than my old one. And it's on the left-hand side. So, and it only goes in one direction. And so it's a matter of figuring out like, how do I hold this thing and all of that with my wrong hand. So
I'm looking to see what one we got. We bought one. Well, not we. Our company bought one. It starts with a J.
a Jura, it's a fairly
That's
common
it.
one. Yeah.
Yeah.
Jura. Yep.
It's really nice. It's like a commercial version. You know what I mean? So it's like,
Yep.
it's pretty sweet.
Yeah, fairly common in office environments. But yeah, this is a Gaja something. But apparently this guy, 80 years ago, he invented the espresso. Achille Gaja, his name was. Yeah, it's an Italian machine.
He invented the drink itself, and so this is his machine?
Yeah, this is his machine. So
that's pretty cool.
I think Philips, like the electronics company Philips, bought Gaja like in the like the 2010s. And they tried to move all the manufacturing and change the way that it was all done. And apparently that was a bit of a disaster. And then in 2019, they went back to having everything manufactured in Italy again. And yeah, it's been good ever since. So.
And away you go. And now it's good again.
Yeah. Good machine.
Well, that's pretty cool, dude. When I head to your house in Aussie land, I'm gonna have to have you'll have to have one waiting for me. Sound good?
Yeah, it's the kind of you look at it and go, gee, they're expensive. But when you think how much coffee you drink, and if I was to buy a cup of coffee, like a coffee every day, we're talking $5-6 a day. We're talking, 300, let's say 340 days of the year. It adds up. Oh,
absolutely. It does. Yep. Yeah, for sure. And so, yeah, it makes it a little bit easier to justify. Right. And so it's so much more convenient too. Like I said, it's part of your morning ritual, morning routine sort of deal, but it's nice sometimes just to have you push the button and it's done. It feels so nice. Just here's my coffee. I'm good to go. So that's cool. Yeah, I've kind of actually, so this is crazy. We have that Jura or whatever. Is it Jura?
Yep.
Yeah, it's good. But sometimes I still like Keurig. I'll literally just go, it's like Keurig coffee. It's just it's fine. I don't need anything fancy. I just literally, and the Jura's being used by somebody else. I'm grab me a Keurig. I don't care.
Yeah. I think also the thing with the office coffee machine is that you get whatever subscription beans come with the maintenance contract for the machine, and they're not necessarily going to be fresh or
so what I will tell you is this is the secret. Jordan Brill, who his parents actually roast their own coffee. They have a company called Pyramid City Roasters. And so we get fresh beans it is top notch. It is really good stuff actually.
That's probably why that machine's busy all the time then.
It is. That's exactly correct.
The beans make a difference, especially if you buy a coffee machine and then you go and buy beans from the supermarket and you look at the date on when those things were it can be weeks to months.
Oh yeah.
Before you get that. And the beans you generally want to use within 2 weeks. So yeah.
Jordan actually is messaging me right now. He came over tonight while I was at a basketball game with my son, and he was like, "Hey, can I borrow your belt sander?" I'm like, "Yeah, sure." So I opened up my garage door for him, and he went and grabbed the belt sander, and he's refinishing his kitchen table, or his one of his tables. And so I was at the game with one of our friends, one of our mutual friends, and I said, "Yeah." Jordan texted me. He said, "What's he doing?" I was like, "Oh, he grabbed my belt sander." He's like, "Does that dude ever stop?" I'm like, "I don't think he does. Do not think he does. He just always has a project going on." So good on him. It's looking good. He sent me some pictures.
When I come to Laracon US next year.
Yes.
That he should bring me some of these Pyramid City coffee.
Oh, yes. Oh, absolutely. He would love to. He'll listen to this. He'll bring them. He'll probably send you some in Aussie land, man, for your new coffee machine.
So expensive.
No, he probably would. He's that kind of guy, He's just that kind of guy.
I would appreciate
Speaking of that kind of guy, yes. Yeah. So Jordan and I are on a little venture here, working on an application, which has been pretty cool, and some other developers on our team. But I think I can try and explain what it is. It's basically a data exchange. I want to call it, I'm using this, you know how Inertia, they said Inertia is like a protocol, right? It's not like a package library. It's like a protocol. It's basically what it is. It standardizes how you pass items from the Laravel backend to the JavaScript front end sort of thing. And it can use, Laravel, it can use Ruby, it can use whatever, right? That's the idea. This is essentially like a data exchange protocol, I will call it, between insurance carriers and their subrogation vendors that they want to use. So you have many insurance carriers, many subrogation vendors. Subrogation vendors is what we do, by the way, Wilbur does. And so the process of getting data from an insurance carrier to your system of record is an absolute pain in the butt. And everybody does it 5 different ways, right? So every single time you bring on a new carrier, it's a brand new integration path. It's like some want to do SFTP, some want to do email, some want to do Excel sheets, some want to actually, send them to your claim uploader on the web, whatever. It's a mess. Everybody has a different way of doing it.
Yep.
The cool thing is that all of these carriers are going to this platform called Guidewire, which is a claims system that's like, it's a piece of software, but they're creating a cloud version of it now. So they're pushing everybody to go to the cloud version. Well, we were approved as a partner, and we now have a Guidewire Cloud Accelerator that plugs in and then gives us access to their APIs. So what we do is we grab the data, we let them, they transport it to us essentially. We standardize it and we provide it in convenient formats to the subrogation vendor. So we have a UI, we have batches, and then we also have APIs. So it's like no code, low code, full code is the idea, right? There's like all 3 paths available. So like a vendor could get started on day 1, or they could go like full integration mode and never touch it with a human, right? Just go APIs. So that's the pitch for it. But some of this is we're dealing with a lot of file paths and a lot of directories. And one of the things we had talked about on the show previously was like tenant file systems. How do we deal with that, right? And so what we decided to do is each team has its own disk. So on the team record, there actually is a disk column. And so when we are pulling out anything for a team, we use storage disk and then tenant disk, and then we specify the team disk in there. And so that works pretty well. But we still have these file paths. Like we have a relatively robust file structure system that we need to maintain in order to be able to allow them to have like S3 access to these buckets. And it needs to be consistently named. So like they have like, vendor, uploads, downloads. Under uploads, you have, claim updates, notes, documents, whatever. You have all these different file structures. And we were trying to figure out, like, I hate magic strings. Don't we all? Right? We hate magic strings in our code. And so especially I was trying to figure out especially now that we have enums, it's like enums to the rescue, right? The only issue was that our file paths had dynamic parts to them, right? So you'd have a file path, but you'd have like an import ID would need to be a part of the file path, or like a date would need to be a part of that file path. And so I'm like, man, this is super frustrating. How do I do this consistently between the classes and the tests and all that stuff? And then it hit me. I was like, we already do this in Laravel. Like we use named routes. That's how we solve this problem. When you're talking about, going from web.php to like your tests to all that stuff, we use named routes. And so what we did is we used an enum called Directories. We had Directories, : dot, and then whatever you want to name that named path, right? So I'd say something like Directories, dot, vendor, uploads, claim updates, like that. That would be like the enum. And then what we can do is that enum is equal to a string that looks exactly like what you'd expect a named route to look like, right? The path. So you have like vendor / curly brace, import ID, curly brace / curly brace, date, curly brace / filename.csv, or whatever it is, right? And now what we can do is we can use those as placeholders. So import ID and date are now placeholders. And so what I did originally, although we did have some discussions about this today on our chat, what I did originally is I just sort of mocked what Laravel does with the route helper, right? So you just call, in Laravel, you call route, and then you pass the named route as a string typically. Although now you can do it as an enum as well if you'd like to. And then as a second argument, you have any of the path parameters, right? So you pass in an array and you'd say import ID, fat arrow, 1, comma, date equals now format YMD, whatever. And that's it. And it pops it out, right? So instead of using route though, we use a helper called directory. So directory, you pass in the enum, then you pass in the array of those values. And then as an optional last argument, you can also pass in a file name. So the reason we have to do this is because sometimes you only need the directory location, and sometimes I actually need the full file path of a file name in that directory. And so the file name as a last argument is optional, but if you pass it in, it'll put a final directory separator and then the file name dot, whatever it is. So this has been incredibly helpful because in all the places where we were previously using just these like glued together strings, and I had absolutely zero confidence that our tests were actually doing what they were supposed to be doing, that they were actually testing the correct location. Now I have a lot of confidence that they are hitting the right locations because I can use the enum to ensure that that's the case. And then if I ever need to change them, I command click on that enum case, and any of the places where it needs to change, I can go look at. So, oh my gosh, so incredibly helpful. And so that's been great.
Yeah, it certainly gives you that consistency, especially like when you're dealing with situations where you need to retrieve those things later. And what you would previously have done is, do the thing here in like you save it over here. And then later you need to then go and fetch it. So you need to go and look at the place where you've saved it to make sure that you load the same thing back out, figure out all the paths and prefixes and variables and things like that. So putting it into an enum is good. So it's good from the consistency perspective there. The one thing that you would probably want to consider, whether or not it's a real thing, is like if you ever need to change the paths.
Right.
Like everything that's already saved, you need to handle the situation. Like, do you go and move all of those? Do you do like a migration of the, from the old path to the new path? Do you decide like, no, we can never do this? Or do you like handle, we create a new, enum member and like, this is how we do it moving forward if we ever want to change it?
It's a really good question. And I actually was just looking this up because you're hitting on sort of a second thing. So the first thing I was concerned about was how do I make sure that I'm consistently generating these paths in my code? And that problem I feel like is solved. The second problem though is how do I store these in my database, right? What is the correct method to store these in my database so that I can later retrieve them, right? Yeah. Because unless I'm storing all of the pieces that I used to create that string, I will not be able to recreate that string later. Yeah. Using that same method. So there's a couple options, right? I can actually store the entire file path in the database record, but that makes it difficult, like you said, to move things.
Yeah.
So I've actually, I kind of looked up a couple different options for how people do this. Let me see. Let me make sure that I'm presenting the whole problem before I jump into the solution, though. So
where you're at is
go ahead.
Where I think most people normally land is that you would store the path to whatever that file is in the database, and then if you're using whether your own implementation or something like Sparse Media Library, where you attach these things then to a model, at least you've always got reference back to the thing that it was related to. But if you want to move it around, you need those variables back out. You need to know how to get back there, which is a thing. So I think you would probably not want to ever change those things once they're set. And that way you don't ever have to worry about going back to this directories helper, because you would only ever pull it out of storage using the path reference and the disk. So you do storage disk, $team disk or whatever it is, arrow, and then whatever the path is from that record. If you're wanting to be able to move things, where you would have to like pull down that file and then get whatever the directory is at that time and then update the path, you could probably do some like date-based things and put a match statement in there that's like, if the thing was before this date, like go and get this value. Otherwise, like you could, there are certainly ways of doing it. But I think the only time it's really going to be problematic is if you need to move existing files.
The good news for me is that, and I agree. It's like you don't know what you don't know. So it's like you want to maintain as much flexibility as you can.
Yeah.
I would say the good thing for me, though, is that most of these files are not super long-lived. Like they're not insanely relevant after about a week. So it's not like I'm going to have months and years worth of data that need to get moved if I do change file paths. I could probably just say like the life of these is 30 days max. And if you haven't gotten it by the time 30 days is around, I'm not storing them for you anymore.
Yeah.
So
are you using S3? Because you set up your expiration rules and they would just disappear automatically. So you don't even have to worry about it.
Yeah. That's a great call, actually. I've done that before.
Lifecycle rules, you set them up on directories. And because if you don't need to worry about it, you can set up the lifecycle rules, which would make sure it's deleted. And then you'd probably schedule some task to, model prune and delete the data from your database. So you're not keeping that as well if that's where you were going.
Yeah. No, that's interesting. The lifecycle hooks thing, I hadn't thought about that. Yeah, I mean, that actually is something really interesting that I've tried a couple times, is those lifecycle hooks in S3 or those lifecycle rules. I actually had it bite me the other day because we've been using AirDrop to push items up to S3 and then pull them down in production. Yep. And I went to redeploy an existing deployment in one of our sites, and it was like, okay, great, no problem. I'll just pull down that AirDrop thing, and it's not there anymore.
Yeah, you got to be
and
careful
the reason why
with the lab. Yeah, you want to do lifecycle rules. Yeah.
Yeah. And so I just extended the lifecycle rule. It was like 30 days, and then I extended it to a year. I'm like, it doesn't matter. It's a year. It's not a big deal. There's not that much stuff in there. So, so anyway, so here's what I would say though. The trick for me, which makes it a little bit complicated, is I have one area of the code and the storage in which is under my complete control. So like, I'm totally aware of what it is, and nobody really can modify or mess with the structure of it. So one way you could do that is if you just, for the record, which you're creating a uploaded file for, you just have like a ULID or a UUID, and you just name that file that. No extension, just you literally name it that. And then inside of the database record itself, you would save like the original uploaded name with the extension.
Yeah.
So what that does is it basically allows you to make sure that there's never going to be duplicate file names. It doesn't matter. And then when you need to download it or need to let somebody download it from your service, you just say like, okay, we'll go grab the ULID at this location and then pull it out and save it as this. You could do that, right? And that basically makes it completely transportable. You can put it wherever you want. It doesn't even matter. However, there's another part of my code where I'm taking pieces that I have generated. So let me be specific, I suppose. Each day at like 1 a.m., I generate a claim batch.csv. And I have a record for it in the UI where they can go download it. And that's the part that I control, and that's completely under my control. But I also have a secondary location that I push it to, that same CSV, where they can download it straight from like an S3 bucket themselves. So they get the credentials to that S3 bucket. If they don't want to come into the UI and download it, they can just hook up to S3 and download it. That one probably has to be named whatever I'm going to name it, right? Like 2024 11-19-claim batch CSV. Something like that. You know what I mean? So that one does have to be named. And so I kind of have to deal with both sides of the world there. I don't think it would be super friendly to just drop like a ULID with no extension file name into that location. It's got to be named some sort of sensical way that they could figure out this is the correct file I'm looking for. So yeah, I'm working through that part right now as far as how I'm going to save it in the database, because that is something that I'm doing really inconsistently across the board right now. And I'd like to just land on a way in which we're going to do that. And so we'll see.
Yeah. It'd be interesting to see where you land on that. But yeah, it's like, it's a consideration, but it may not actually be a problem.
Right.
It's
not a problem yet.
Comes up.
It's not a problem yet, because each of our imports that we store use sort of like the Spatie Media Library way, where it's like, Spatie Media Library, the way that they do it is they use an ID of the record itself in the media library. So there's an auto-incrementing ID on the media table that you have from Spatie, so 1 through infinity, right? And whenever something is attached to record number 1 in media library, it creates a folder of ID 1 / and then everything gets stored underneath that. And then 2 and whatever. So instead of saying like, hey, instead of naming them with some ULID, they basically just say, I'm going to create a subdirectory and then drop your file in there. And that way we'll avoid any collisions. So they keep the original name when they save it as the value that's in S3 or wherever you're going to have it. So that's cool. The other thing that's interesting too is like we are having each vendor, each tenant in the system has its own disk in Laravel. But the neat thing about that is we can also allow people to host their own storage. So if they want to pay for their own storage, if they want to put it in S3, if they wanted to put it in Cloudflare R2, or if they wanted to put it in Azure Blob, it doesn't matter. Like we can push it wherever they want. As long as we have a driver for Laravel that suits that, doesn't make any difference, which is really cool. So that was
Yeah,
just kind
also
of a
then
happy
takes the
coincidence.
responsibility away from you as well.
Correct.
To store those things.
Correct.
And which, it would have compliance and whatever else um, benefits outside of just like, yeah, we're not paying for it. Well, no, that means that that stuff gets pushed straight to their own thing and they can access it in whatever way they need to access it, which is good.
You hit the nail on the head though with the compliance stuff, dude, because that's exactly it. It's like,
Yeah.
I do not want to be responsible for some data loss, data leakage garbage. It's like, it's on their side. We are just a pass through. That's my goal, right? So it's like for any partners that we have that are over X number of claims a month or something like that,
we'll
like just require them to have their own storage. Yeah. Yep.
Amazing.
So it's been good. It's been good. It's been a good project. Really excited about it. The other thing that we could talk about in 2 weeks if we want to, or we could talk about now is documentation stuff. But that's been sort of fun too, trying to figure out what we're going to use for documentation. There's lots of libraries out there. Have you used any libraries for documentation stuff?
I've used VPress, and I know that VPress was used for a while. I saw James Brooks was posting that they're starting to move the Laravel documentation things to Mintlify, Mintlify. So it's probably what everyone will use now. But
so it's interesting, right? So, I mean, I don't want to be that guy, but should I be that guy?
Gone.
Okay.
Guy.
All right. So Laravel gets venture money, right? Okay. Then they have a Sentry integration on Forge. Sentry is also backed by the same venture company, right? And then they move the documentation to Mintlify, which is also a venture-backed company. Are we seeing a trend here? Right? I think it's sort of like a I scratch your back, you scratch mine sort of deal.
Keep it all in the family kind of thing.
Correct. Where it's like, hey, we need to redo our docs. Why don't we just use this other product that we also have investments in? Great, let's go to Mintlify. You know what I mean? So it's sort of like, hey, everybody who's a Laravel user, we're now using Mintlify. It's like free advertising. You know what I mean? And so that's kind of my take. I don't even know that it's necessarily like Mintlify is $50 million. What's that now?
Free advertising for the low price of $50 million.
Right, exactly. But you know what I'm saying? Like Mintlify, I think like maybe it is or isn't the absolute best case like option for like your docs, but it's what they're using, and so it's like great and it's fine. I mean, I looked at the platform.
It depends on what kind of docs what kind of docs you're building as well. Like if it's developer documentation, it's okay, but like the hesitation is always unless it's A, kept up to date, and B, hosted somewhere that you can access it. Before you have for onboarding, for example, if you've got documentation that you need to build before you can spin up a repo, that's probably not ideal. But certainly, like we use ClickUp for most things, I think, because anyone can write that documentation. It's all just marked down. There's the WYSIWYG and things like that as well. But it's always interesting to see that kind of stuff. But it does look nice, Mintlify. It's
it really does.
Plain. It's it's the commercial, not like it's not a paid thing, but it's the commercial version of like this is what happens when some money goes into a company building a thing.
Yeah. The challenge, and so how much time are we at right now?
We're over. We're done. We're finished.
We're over. Okay. So here, I'll give you the quick teaser version of it, right? So we were looking at documentation stuff. And we were looking at VPress, which I've got to say, VPress is freaking awesome. It's pretty good. So good.
It looks really good. It's marked down to get started. You can bolt your view stuff in there as well. Like Mintlify is great if you want to pay, to have it hosted for you. But I think VPress is probably the way to go for most open source things and internal documentation and things like that. It would be easy enough.
It really is so good. Now, the thing I will say about it is that it's a little bit difficult to host within your existing application, right? I said this is going to be teaser, so I promise it will be. But if you want to have it inside of your existing Laravel app, so if you have like myapp.com and you don't want to have docs.myapp.com, you want to have like myapp.com/docs, which you could have for a number of different reasons, then you've got to do some work and some weird stuff to get VPress to do that. We have to, and this sounds so weird, our documentation requires login. You have to be logged in.
Right.
And
sure.
it's just because of like some agreements that there are with these different, carriers and things like that. They're very, touchy about that sort of stuff.
They don't want anyone to have access to their stuff directly.
Correct. And so we have to have people who've been approved to be able to see it. So we have to protect it behind Laravel's authentication stuff. And so we're currently in the process of moving over our VPress documentation over to Preset, which is a library that we talked about on air for Laravel News not too long ago. So it's like a Markdown implement. It uses Markdown, and then it looks very similar to VPress, but I think it uses like Folio or something behind the scenes, maybe Volt, something like that. So interesting. Nice. Anyway, we can talk about that next time, and we can also talk about getting a Filament app to run at the root of your application while also using Jetstream and Fortify. Fun times.
We can do that next time because my video has frozen for those of you watching on YouTube.
I saw that.
Just trying to figure out this whole doc situation. I was saying to Chris Fidel, like, watch out with that cam link because interesting. Hang on, I'll be right back. Apparently I have frozen, so
yeah, no worries.
Yeah, my recording stopped. You won't get my video back, but that's okay. We'll just deal with it later.
No worries. Should I wrap this one up for us?
Yeah, that's right. I'll wrap it, and then I was talking to Chris Fidel about this thing. I said, be careful with your cam link going into a dock because they're incompatible. And he goes, oh, it seems to be working. I'm like, yeah, it will work insofar as like I plugged it in and it looked like it was working, but then as we have just seen here, it will at some point potentially just stop working. So
just stop
working. We will wrap it here, I think.
Sounds good. You want me to do it, or is it still recording on your side or no?
You do it, just in case it's not recording on my side.
Sounds good. Everyone, thanks so much for listening to episode 166. You can find show notes for this episode at northmeetsouth.audio/166. If you like the podcast, please rate it up in your podcatcher of choice. 5 stars would be incredible. And if you have any questions, hit us up on Twitter, on X, or on Bluesky. I don't know if your handle's the same. I think mine might be close. At Jacob Bennett, at Michael Dorinda, or at North South Audio. All right, folks. Till next time. See you later.
Bye.